Thank you, Howard, for the kind introduction. And in full disclosure, for any of you that are watching this from home after the fact, I'm recording this later. Why? I had a few technological Zoom problems and I didn't want to look like Manili Vanilli lip syncing and then getting caught. So in full transparency, we are recording this a little bit after the fact, and I've written down some of the questions that I got in the actual presentation. So what we're going to share today, what I'm going to share is the adaptive seller. What are 4 strategies we need to adapt to this totally new environment that we find ourselves in? Now, just a few days ago, my 15-year-old son came to me and he said, Shari, I find it really interesting that some dude eating a bat in China is preventing me from going to the gym in Park City, Utah. But it just goes to show you how interconnected we all are. And I believe this virus is really pointing out to us as a nation and as a people that the more we help others, the more we help ourselves. So how much must we adapt? And really, everything's changed if you think about it. The way we eat, the way we talk, where we work, where you're watching this, what we think about, what we dream about, where we go, where we can't go. I mean, if someone had said to me weeks ago, even the word coronavirus, I probably would have thought it was some beer pong game being played by college students on college campuses. But here we are in a totally new reality. And there's only one thing we can do, and that is to adapt. Now, adapting shouldn't be foreign to anybody. Animals, people, we've been adapting since the beginning of time. It's called survival of the fittest. Now, let's just go take a look, just for fun, how many animals have had to learn to adapt. Now, starting with the alligator, I hadn't known this, but the alligator actually adapted from the Dinosuchus, and the way it survived is by getting thicker skin. The mammoth adapted into the elephant, the modern day elephant. And how did the elephant adapt? It got bigger ears. Maybe there's a metaphor here. And then the horse, the modern day horse came from an animal I can't even pronounce called Euphifius or something. And the modern day horse got stronger and faster. So here's my question to you. How has this beast adapted? Well, we've adapted quite a bit. Like I said, you're probably watching this from home. I was so excited to meet so many of you for the first time. John Barrows, Beck Holland, people I've been following, to see friends, Howard Doper, Lori Richardson, Jamie. But here we are, we've had to adapt. So the big question is, what specifically are the ways we need to adapt as sellers, as leaders, in order to survive and thrive when we come out of this? Because we've got an opportunity right now. We've got potential to really do some things that are going to set us up for success, and perhaps even more success than before. Well, I have an acronym and I call it WAVE. We must adapt so many things, but the 4 specific things, and we need to ride the wave, is the way we work, the way we ask, the way we add value, and the way we engage with each other, ourselves, and our employees. We need to ride the wave. Well, let's start with work. Boy, has there been an adaptation with the way we work. Like I said, the majority of the workforce is working virtually. Many have never done it, have never been on a Zoom, never used virtual technology. You got dogs barking, you got kids running around with their pants down. That actually happened to us a couple of days ago. So work is very different than it was before. And I believe it was John Barrows who asked the question, do we need to work harder or do we need to work smarter? And his answer is the same as my answer. It's both. Now, it's very easy to take shortcuts right now for sellers and to say, I only need to work 3 hours. Nobody will know. Nobody's watching. Even leaders, I've heard them say, I finally have time to clean out my sock drawer. There's so many things. If you want to get ahead, what we know, no successful person has ever gotten ahead taking easy street. I find a lot of people get into sales and think, oh, all I got to be able to do is talk to people, the money will follow. Or I'll hear sellers say, oh, I can talk to anybody. When in fact, you and I both know it's not about being able to talk to anybody. Great sellers can listen to anybody. So we need to change the way we work. And I have a suggestion that we not only work harder and smarter, we work scarier. I have a saying, think about what you're scared to do. What you're scared to do, you must do. The person you're afraid to call, you must call. And now, as Lori Richardson said, we can actually get a hold of them. So we've got some new opportunities here with the way we work. Then we worked in offices and we could mingle, and we did mingle, and we got by without leveraging new technologies, some of us. Only 3% responded to cold calls and cold email. Well, that landscape has changed. I believe that social distancing is actually giving us new opportunities to connect. But what we need to focus on is omni-channel marketing and prospecting. It's not enough just to prospect in the exact same way that we've always done it. We've got to get creative. I love a joke. I don't know if you've heard it. It's an old joke about a drunk who's looking for his car keys under a street lamp in the dark. Police officer comes by and says, "Can I help you?" He says, "Oh, I'm looking for my keys." The officer gets down on his hands and knees and says, "Let me help you." Well, after about 10 minutes, the officer says to the drunk, "Are you sure you lost your keys here?" The drunk says, "Oh no, I lost them across the street." Exacerbated, the police officer says, "Well, what are you looking for them here for?" And the drunk replies, "Well, the light's much better here." See, too many sellers are in the dark when it comes to prospecting. They're looking in all the wrong places. We need to hunt where our customers are. And right now, they're at home. So we've got to think creatively about, what does that mean and how can I get through to them? The landscape has changed. Well, one of the best ways is what I call a party without pants. Now, before you think, what's she talking about? Come on, look down. Half of you are wearing a nice shirt and you're wearing your pajamas or your sweatpants beneath. In fact, just a funny little tip, Walmart reported that their clothes sales is up from the waist up. So what's a party without pants? I think one of the best ways to get a hold of people right now is to brush up on your LinkedIn skills. And I know we just heard about doing that from our last speaker, about how we need to leverage LinkedIn. But I find that a lot of salespeople think that that's really scary. So I want to give you a fun way to remember just some rules of LinkedIn and engaging on LinkedIn. And if you want more depth, there's many people that offer LinkedIn classes. But I call it a party without pants because LinkedIn really isn't any different. The rules that apply for networking on LinkedIn are the same as going to a party or a networking event. You just get to do it without pants. So a couple of really quick tips. What's the first thing your mama told you about going to a party? What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to bring a gift, chocolate, wine. Well, it's the same thing on LinkedIn. You want to give something before you ask for something. You want to just shove something down somebody's face. People connect with me all the time, try to sell me their products. I'm not going to listen to them. Bring a gift. What does that mean in LinkedIn terms? A piece of content. It could be a video, it could be an article, but give something. You've got to give value before you ask for anything in return. Make it about them. I say be interested, not interesting. So you want to talk about them, and Beck Holland talks about this, about the first thing that you should talk about is something about them, about where they went to school, an article they wrote, same thing live. You want to be interested, not interesting. Third, like what they say. Show them, give them validation. You do this on LinkedIn. Like other people's posts, share other people's posts. Finally, introduce them to others. One of the best ways to network is to introduce people. Now, if I was at a party, I might say, "Oh, you got to meet Dr. Dover. This guy's incredible. He's got one of the most powerful sales program, the most powerful sales program in the country. Please meet Howard Dover." You can do the same thing on LinkedIn. And when you do that, when you connect people, you become popular at that party. You want to do the same thing on LinkedIn. And then finally, send a thank you. Once somebody connects with you, thank them for the connection. And then, and only then, can you talk to them about your products or services. You have to earn the right at this party without pants. And if you're not on LinkedIn, please join the party because it is a great party. And I've met many of the people on this call through LinkedIn, having never even met them. So again, this is one of the pieces of omni-channel marketing. The other thing, and I'm sure that's going to make you hungry, You want to be creative. And I want to tell you about a time where I personally used a pizza in order to get in touch with a very difficult prospect. Now, the reason I say this is I find that a lot of people right now, they're home and they're saying, nobody will answer the phone. It's so rude to call people right now. Ladies and gentlemen, the show must go on. Lori Richardson said it best. We're the ones that are going to jumpstart the economy. Now, we have to do this tenderly. We have to do it with empathy, but we can't stop selling. We are the engine. Sales reps are the engine of the economy. But at the same time, we need to be creative. And I'll tell you what drives me crazy. People that say, oh, I left them a message, or, I sent an email. Think of it this way. Our priority isn't their priority until we make it. So we've got to get them on the phone in order to give them our message. So you're going to need to be a little creative right now. Try different things. One of the best deals I ever got was because of a pizza. I kept trying to get a hold of a gentleman named Simon. He is my ideal client profile. And I called his assistant several times, Gigi. I made friends with her. And Simon was always in a meeting. Every time I called, he's in a meeting. He's in a meeting. I knew I needed to get a hold of Simon. So finally, one day I called. Gigi said, Simon's in a meeting. It was 11:30. There were 15 people in the conference room, she said. So I said, Gigi, has Simon eaten lunch? She said, no. Why? I said, what's the best pizza place in town? She said, Polly's. Why? I said, tell you what, I'm going to send over 3 large pizza pies from Polly's. And then I'm going to email you a poem. If you don't mind, tape it to the box, to the pizza box, and take a couple of pizzas for yourself. Well, the poem that Gigi put on the box read, is it sunny or is it raining? It's always good weather for online training. I know you're busy playing businessman and banker, but isn't it time we set down our anchor? So when you're done with that last pepperoni, pick up the phone and let's make some money. Well, you guessed it. Simon called me 45 minutes later, cracking up, and it turned into our first 7-figure deal. Simon was a customer for the next 10 years, and we did great business together. I tell you this story because I'm hearing all kinds of creative ideas, particularly right now. One of our clients wasn't able to get 2 stakeholders together. And so what she did is she sent a bottle of champagne to one and 2 champagne glasses to the other and said, when this is all over, let's toast to our success. She was able to get a phone call with both of them on Zoom when she previously hadn't been able to do that. So just think creatively. How can you get a hold of people? Can you send them a note? What can you do? Can you send them a song? Can you send them a poem? I don't know what it is, but we have a rare opportunity today to adapt what we do. But we need to work smarter and we need to work harder and maybe a little bit scarier. And I just want to ask you all a question right now. If today you won the lottery, let's say you won a couple $100, not a huge lottery, or even $1,000, a better lottery, how would you feel? Go ahead and type it in. Don't overthink this. How would you feel? Most people's initial response is, oh, I'd feel really happy. And I'm sure you would. I would too. But here's my next question for you. Would you feel proud? Why not? You wouldn't feel proud because you didn't earn it. When we take the time to work harder, to work smarter, and to work scarier, we'll have a sense of pride that will carry us over. Nobody wants it easy. So we need to work differently. We need to work smarter. We need to work harder, and we need to work scarier. Now, how do we need to adapt the way we ask? We need to ask a little bit differently right now. Now, if you've read my book, I talk about a New York Times article that was printed many years ago. And the New York Times article was 36 questions to fall in love. The idea behind it was if you asked somebody 36 questions, they would fall in love with you. Now, the questions get progressively deeper. And when you ask them, they cause the other person to become more and more vulnerable. And after you ask those questions, the thought is they fall in love with you. So I'm thinking, if 36 questions can get a complete stranger to fall in love with me, how many questions would it take to get a prospect to buy from me? Well, I did some research, and it turns out it's not the number of questions you ask that matters, it's the types of questions that you ask that matters. And there's three types of questions that all sellers must ask in any sales encounter, but the third type is even more important today as we're in this new normal. So I'm going to go through a quick review of what the questions are. The first type of question that we all must ask are skin questions. Now, skin questions are questions about the facts. How many sales reps do you have? What kind of software are you using now? You should be able to research these skin questions online. Somebody was mentioning Gong earlier. Gong has determined that if we ask too much questions, we actually turn our customers off. So you want to do as much research as you can before you ever do a demo or get on the phone with somebody, and you should have uncovered most of the skin questions. I will say 80% of all reps stop with this surface level or skin information, and then they pitch. Instead, better salespeople break past the skin and get to the bones. Now, bone questions reveal problems. Bone questions are questions like, if you could change anything about your situation, what would it be? What are some of the new challenges that you're facing given this new crisis? What are your biggest concerns in running a remote staff? So the questions are a little bit different, but the idea is you're still trying to uncover these problems. Now, the best salespeople in the world move past the skin, through the bones, and into the heart, because that's where sales are made. And I will tell you, in these times of uncertainty, it's the only place sales are made. We need to ask not just who, what, where questions, but why questions. Why would that be important to you? And you're going to find people are motivated by one of 7 key motivators. I talk about this in my book. We want to get to the heart motivators. People are motivated by relationships. People are motivated by earning respect, by legacy. And you're going to find the leaders today are nervous. They're nervous about their relationships at home. They're nervous about having to lay people off. Arnie Sorensen at Marriott actually cried with having to furlough many of his employees. And only when we can get into the heart of what's on people's minds and what's in their heart today can we really make an impact. So I would also say today we can even start with the heart. People are very emotional right now. They're willing to open up, and we need to get there and really listen. And don't act like you care. What you want to do is really care. Too many people use caring as a technique or empathy as a technique. I always say, and it's especially true today, lead with empathy. Trust is made of 5 components: empathy, reliability, integrity, empathy, competency, reliability, integrity, and vulnerability. But it's empathy that gets you in the door. It's reliability, competency, and integrity that keep you there. Today, more than ever, start with the heart, lead with empathy, ask 2 questions. And as leaders, I want you to ask 2 questions of your team. How are you? How are you? What are some wins you've had? What's it like working from home? Same with your customers. You've got to ask skin, bone, and heart questions and really get to the heart of what's going to motivate them and how you can solve their problems. Okay? So with that, let's go to the next section. Oh, and by the way, when we did this live, somebody asked me, how is skin, bone, and heart different from spin selling? From Neil Rackman's seminal book, Spin Selling. And yes, Rackman goes through something very, very different when he talks about spin. And he talks quite a bit about finding the implications of the problem. And I talk about that as well. I use skin, bone, and heart. It originated, we have a client in the healthcare space, and now they're using this. And as I've rolled this out, it just resonates with people. It gives a great visual. I think many of the trainings that we teach are similar, but if they're more memorable and they're more fun, reps tend to remember them longer. I also might say there's a 4th type of question we need to ask today. And I'm going to call that a connective tissue question. So we need to ask skin, bone, heart, but also connective tissue, which is how does the organization work? Gartner came out with a study last year and said one of the biggest reasons people don't make decisions is because the decision-making process is complex within an organization. We now know there's an average of 11 stakeholders in a B2B sale. So a lot of times people are afraid to make decisions, and we have to help customers learn how to get consensus and how to make decisions. So a question you want to add into your repertoire, which is the connective tissue question, is what is your criteria for making a decision like this? And I will tell you, a lot of customers have never thought of having a criteria. So to the extent we can give them a framework for how to make a decision, we are offering value that differentiates us from anyone else. And with that said, now that we're talking about value, let's look at how we need to adapt the way we actually offer value. And let's start, first of all, with what is value? HubSpot defines value as giving information or insights to customers that they couldn't get on their own. Now, granted, 67% of all customers read online and they research online before they even talk to a seller. So we can give somebody value by offering them insights. Gartner, on the other hand, maintains that we create value by making sense of all the information a customer already has. But there's an adaptation today. I want you to think of three things as we're in this COVID crisis, and that is this. What is value really? There's a default tendency for individuals and for buyers today, for customers, for companies, to go into freak out mode. They need to downsize, they need to furlough employees. Just talked to another one just half an hour ago. They're in a lot of fear. The tendency is to look for the easy money. I've seen sellers like, oh, we got to play the lottery. We got into getting some get rich quick scam. Customers immediately going to how can we clip expenses? I want you to think of value this way. If we chase the money, we're taking a little bit of a shortcut. Money comes as a byproduct of giving value. When we give value to somebody, money is the reward. If we go after the money, it'll never work. In this time, you may have to give extra value without expecting anything in return right away. We need to stay top of mind with our customers that aren't willing to spend right now. Not everybody is. Now, there is an opportunity to pivot and find other ways to create value, but don't go for the money, go for the value, and eventually that reward will come to you. I also want to make a recommendation to the leaders that are listening in. Lincoln coined the phrase team of rivals. And if you've seen the film or if you've read the history of President Lincoln, he actually brought his greatest adversaries, his greatest rivals, people that ran against him, into his own cabinet. Why? He wanted differing opinions. I will tell you, you don't need to make these decisions on your own as a leader. You want to get as many people in the decision-making process as possible, and you'll be amazed at how many good ideas come right from the ranks. We have a customer that just did this. They thought of solutions and ways to add value that the leader never even thought of. Real adaptive leadership is being to let go of the reins and get the opinions from others and a diverse group. Lori Richardson talked earlier about how many women do you have at the table? Does your, and it's not just women, it's diversity, it's inclusion. Does your team represent who your customers are, the diversity of your customers? Because if you can surround yourself with people that disagree with you, that's going to help you grow and adapt. Otherwise, you're going to do the same thing that you always did. So money follows value. You need a team of rivals, and then you need to be willing to pivot. Get creative. What can you offer differently? How can you use what you're good at? Look at your values of your company, and can you pivot and offer different solutions? A lot of people in my business, in the training business, took our keynote speeches and put them all online. We did the same. We took 10 different topics and now we're offering them to our customers online. We had to pivot. I just heard of a company in Asia, a big department store. Some of their main revenue was through their estheticians, through doing makeup and selling makeup. They had to shut down, obviously, for the virus. So what the executive team did is they said to the estheticians, here's a list of people. You can do consultations via Zoom. Oh my gosh, turns out they did twice the amount of revenue by having women be able to get the consultation in the comfort of their own home. So get creative and think, how can we pivot our offerings to face this new reality? What can we do to add value? Then the money will follow. Okay? So with that, today's customer is trying to retain their customers and employees, make sense of all the information they have, an adaptation for survival, develop a plan to add value without receiving anything in return, be a helping brand, team of rivals, hugely important, and pivot. Help customers identify questions they may not even have known to ask. Next, let's talk about engage. How do we engage with our employees that are working from home? If you're a seller listening to this, how do you keep engaged? Now, there's a lot of things you can do when you're working from home. I've done it for a long time. I do try to get dressed, at least from the top up. You want to really have some rituals that help you. I think it's important to get outside, to walk, to move, to do whatever you can. So there's a lot of things that you want to look at doing. Connect with people that you don't normally connect with. But one of the most important things I think we can do right now is really concentrate on our learning and development. We need to create a culture of learning and development. We have an opportunity right now to take our learning to the next level. Carol Dweck, if you've ever heard of her, she's a Stanford psychologist and an author. She wrote the book called A Growth Mindset. And Carol Dweck maintains that there's two types of people in the world: those with a growth mindset and those with a fixed mindset. She tells us that people with a fixed mindset see their skills as something that's set in stone. You're either born with a certain skill or an attribute or you're not. People with a growth mindset, on the other hand, believe they can learn and grow and do anything. And it's people with a growth mindset that survive and thrive with change. Do you have a growth mindset? Do you hire people with a growth mindset? So we really need to look at that, and how do we engage this new growth mindset, and what do we need to do to be able to grow our skills? And just for fun, I want to do a little exercise with you. It'd be more fun if I could see this, but try this at home if you're watching this. It's a very fun exercise. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I'm going to ask you to draw something. I'm going to ask you to draw a picture of either the Statue of Liberty or Snow White's castle with you standing in front of it. Howard did a great job of this on the call today. You've got exactly 30 seconds. On your mark, get set, and go. You got 30 seconds. Do this at home. Snow White's castle with the Statue of Liberty. You got 15 seconds. Draw away. Oh, this is so much more fun in person, but we're going to give it a go because we've got to adapt. All right, 3, 2, 1. Great. Now go ahead and look at your pictures. And now what I want you to do is put a number on your beautiful drawing that corresponds to the age that it looks like the artist is who drew that piece of artwork. You're like most people, you gave yourself a 5, a 6, maybe a 9. There may be some of you that are real artists that gave yourself a 35 or a 25. The majority of the people rate somewhere under 10. But what does this have to do with sales? If you're like most people, you grew up doing artwork all the time. You got a little bit older, and then you started learning geometry and science and history and maybe sales if you were lucky enough to be in a sales course at a school like Dr. Dover's. But the point is, most of us stop drawing at some point. What that means, if we have a skill set that's frozen in time. Unfortunately, too many sellers think sales training and learning and growing is a one and done endeavor. But our brains actually continue to grow. It's called plasticity. So the more we learn and the more varied information we learn, the more our brains actually grow. We have an opportunity right now to help our brains grow. I made a commitment, you should do something similar, that in addition to my prospecting and in addition to my business, I'm going to have a 2-2 every day. I'm going to learn 2 new things every day. It might be a new feature on LinkedIn. It might be that I'm going to learn how to knit or how to cook. From a business perspective, I'm going to learn 2 new things. And from a personal perspective, I committed to learning 2 new things. I'm a terrible cook. I need to learn to cook. So it might be a recipe, it might be gardening, it might be playing an instrument, but the more we grow, the more powerful we're going to be in every single aspect of our lives. Now, in addition to that, leaders, are we offering courses up for our people? TED Talks, online courses, whatever the case may be. Because here's what I know. The sellers that know not only their products, but how to overcome objections, how to do a great demo. They've got great anecdotes. They know how to write a good email. Once we get the stuff down, the technological things and the functional things down, only then can we create a true relationship with the customer in front of us. If we're thinking about, oh, how do I do this demo? If we're screwing around with Zoom like I was this morning, then we can't really focus on connecting with our audience. Several months ago, I'll tell you a quick story. My husband decided to take me out on a date before we were in quarantine. And now that we have children, we got to have date night. And he offered to take me to the symphony. Now, I have a confession to make to you. And that confession is I'm not that sophisticated. So I was not excited about going to the symphony, but I got kind of my nice shoes on and everything. I got all dressed up. We went down to Salt Lake City, sat in a seat. We're in like 5th row seats, so I'm pretty psyched, right? Except I would have been more psyched if it was an Adele concert, truth be told. Well, the soloist comes on. His name's Augustine Hogdala, and he starts playing his violin. And I got to tell you, I was transported. I started feeling emotions I didn't even know I could feel. I was feeling happy. I was feeling sad. I was feeling jealous. I was feeling passionate. I mean, this man was making love to this violin. It was unbelievable. Now, Augustine Hogdala wasn't thinking, should I play a B flat? Should I play this note? No. He had practiced so much. He knew the chords, the instruments so well that he could focus on creating a connection with the audience in front of him. Here's my challenge to you. Do you know every aspect of your craft so well that you can pivot if your technology fails, which trust me, it will, that you can pivot in times of a crisis? Do you know your technology so well that you can create a connection with your customer and never miss a beat? Leaders, this is our chance. This is our chance to help really create this culture of learning and development. I call it the growth equation. The best way to a growth mindset is by implementing the growth equation. We start with generating curiosity. We make sure our reps take responsibility and that we take responsibility for our growth, because the goal is to get to a state like Augustine Hogdala of unconscious mastery. So with that said, and that's a picture of Augustine Hogdala. He really was fabulous. With that said, I want to leave you with this. When we talk about change and we talk about adaptation, realize animals have been adapting since the beginning of time, and so have successful humans. And I'm not talking about completely changing your behavior. What I'm talking about is adapting. We don't need to change from an elephant to a rhino, but we do need to adapt. We need to adapt how we work and work in this new environment. We need to adapt how we ask. We need to ask these skin, bone, and heart questions. We need to add value differently. We need to remember that value is because that money follows value. We need to engage. We need to keep ourselves engaged so we can get to that next level. And when we ride the wave of change and we learn to adapt, we'll not only survive, but we'll thrive. Thank you so much. And I look forward to our next event. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, everyone, for making this possible.